Welcome back, friends. And as we always like to start things off, we want to let you know what is going on MGO Blue Podcast. Conquering Heroes this week on Thursday. I had a great conversation with Big Ten champ Paul Judah and Fredrick Richard. They were on last week's episode. This week, I'm going to have head coach of the women's tennis program. And let me tell you what, they are kicking butt and taking names. That's Ronnie Bernstein, 17-3 overall, 10-0 in the Big Ten, and just mowing through the Big Ten season especially with the added teams. All four teams that have been added to the conference all have tennis programs. So it's exciting to see the trip out west. And they've got a couple of them this coming weekend in Washington and Oregon. So excited about what's going on in the tennis program. So you can catch that. The Defend the Block, obviously, since the season is over, is taking a few weeks hiatus. But if you miss Brian Boesch, wait no longer, because Mr. Boesch is here with us today. Mr. Boesch, how are you?
John, congratulations on making it to Masters Week. I know, big golf guy. I know you're fired up.
I want to go to the Masters dinner, and I don't have it in front of me, but I have been drooling over what Scotty Scheffler picked for his Masters dinner, the captain's dinner, and it just looked amazing. Tomahawk steak. I know that was on there.
So I think it's maybe the best I've ever seen, and I'm not saying I look at it religiously every year, but I will say that the thing that caught my eye at the beginning, for me looking at it, was the end. Because I believe that the best possible dessert you can have is a cookie skillet with ice cream. I don't think there's anything you can beat that with. There are some I would be like, yeah, maybe I'm in the mood, but agnostic to seasons, holidays, vibes, give me that cookie skillet.
I am not going to argue that as much as I would like to. Now, there's everybody wants to get real creative with the cookie skillet. It's just chocolate chip cookie skillet. That's all. Don't get wild and crazy. Don't go off the map, off the radar. Don't get bizarre. Keep it there. And French vanilla ice cream, I'm all about it. I would say there's one that is as good. Not going to say better, but as good. And that would be chocolate lava cake. But the lava can't just be, warm chocolate syrup. It needs to be Saunders hot fudge. I've had one of those in one point in my life, and it's an out-of-body experience. I'll put it that way. Just once, yes, because the restaurant that had it is no longer in existence, and I didn't get a chance to go back, and I don't have the recipe, so it will live in my mind and become better and better as the days slowly go by. This off season, without football and without any more Saunders chocolate lava cake.
Elite level appetizers, cheeseburger sliders served Scotty style. Not exactly sure what that means, but firecracker shrimp, sweet Thai chili and sriracha mayo. And then Papa Chef's meatball and ravioli bites. I mean, that is awesome.
Yeah. And I know that for those that aren't necessarily meat eaters, there was it redfish?
Blackened redfish.
Blackened redfish, yeah. So it just leaves more steak for the rest of us. So go for it. To each their own.
Family style mac and cheese, jalapeno cream corn. I've never had jalapeno cream corn. That sounds awesome.
Oh, Fleming's used to have a jalapeno cream corn. That was unbelievable. Again, off the menu. So thank you very much for ruining my ability.
No wonder you've had so much success with your weight.
Yes, I know. Yeah, all my favorite foods, they've discontinued.
I give in.
And it's not like I'm withering away to nothing. I haven't missed a whole lot of meals.
Yeah, but you're doing pretty well for yourself. All right, we will certainly get John's Masters analysis next week. Don't blink, you might miss it. But
we'll right before the O-line breakdown.
I hope we have enough bandwidth. All right, let's get into our 7 from 77 here. And we'll start just with a broad question here, John. We're past the midway point of spring ball. So what has caught your eye as we get into the stretch run of the spring?
Well, so there's a lot on defense that I really like. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in some of the rest of the 7 for 77. But I think there are people that do have high expectations for this defense, whether it's Fredrick Moore or it's the defensive line, it's Rayshon Barham. They're how they're going to use them. Jimmy Rolders looked great. But offensively, that's kind of where my eye goes, not just because I was an O-lineman, all that stuff, but it's the biggest question mark going into this season is what is this offense under Chip Lindsey going to be? Are they going to have receivers, the quarterback that can actually throw it, 10 plus yards down the field for a completion? And the answer is to all those Wolverine fans sitting on the edge of their seat right now, yes. And so I know that's exciting to hear, but it's really the development of some of the young guys, and everybody wants to see it, and they should come out and see Bryce Underwood and the chance to get a chance to look at him for the very first time at the spring game. I think you're going to be excited about what you see. His development, being comfortable in the offense, being able to throw the ball in the pocket, get outside the pocket, run and throw the ball on the run. I really like what I see early on from him and just becoming comfortable in the offense. But and I caution this because everybody's going to say, oh, it's Jansen talking about the O-line. There needs to be major improvements on the offensive line over what we saw last year. And I like Giovanni going back to the left guard spot. And he talked about earlier in the month, we had him on the podcast. He talked about, or I think it's still to come, right? We haven't used his audio yet.
Next week's episode, Gio El Hadi coming up.
Yeah, so little teaser there. If I get my calendar right. But it's for him, he's so much more comfortable over there. And we talked about this, another former U of M guy, Graham Glasgow with the Lions, moving over to right guard last year when they had Kevin Zeitler. It's a really difficult transition, and it's really hard to put into words unless you've done something like that as to why that is. Everything in your brains flips over. Now he gets to go back to his original spot, and he's working with Evan Link, who's currently at left tackle. And which he looks good over there, which he did in the bowl game as well. But it's some of these young guys on the offensive line, and whether they played this year, like an Andrew Babalola, I really like what I've seen from him and his growth. Obviously, the first time in pads, he's scrambling, right? And it's, hey, you set once and you get a win, starting to feel good about what you see, and then somebody comes inside or there's a move off of a move, and the learning process has been sped up from him. I like him as an athlete. Obviously, the weight room is going to be very important for him throughout the course of the summer. But then you look at a guy like Andrew Gash, and what I've seen from him as a young player, being able to go in there and pick up the offense, and it doesn't look like the physicality is too much. Like he kind of fits in. And so I don't know that we'll see him a lot this year, but I do like what I've seen from him. Andrew Sprague at right tackle. Again, it's all about development right now in the spring. And Nathan Afobe at right guard. Those guys are really starting to gel and come together. And trust me, I am not naming a starting offensive line. I'm just telling you what I have seen from this offensive line, because it's been a huge question mark. And it was a major concern last year for the entirety of the season. They played a little bit better towards the end, but it has to take major jumps. They're not there yet. They're not there. They're not even close yet. But I do like the mentality that I've seen them take the practice field with, the growth from practice to practice. And where I see that is when a guy gets beat. It's going to happen, right? You're playing against a really good defensive front. Do you get beat on the same thing repeatedly? And no, I see corrections. I see a light bulb go on. Okay, this is why it happened. I set too wide, or I set too far back. I got my feet too close together. And I see corrections being made on the practice field, and certainly from practice to practice. So I'm really excited about that. The receivers, I like the growth that I've seen there and the talent level, just being able to have some big targets. With McCulley, it's been great to see. So I am excited about what I'm seeing at spring practice.
I'd like to apologize to all the listeners, the viewers live, that I did not and do not have an offensive line topic here this week on 7 from 77. So John sees the opportunity. I gave him too much of an opening there, and he took it. So that's on me.
Hey, I am answering the questions that you ask. You're welcome.
Yeah, no special teams talk. I'm shocked. All right, number 2 on our 7 from 77. This time of year, media availability obviously much more common. One of the more interesting notes that we heard came on Friday, and Mason Curtis talking about doing some work at nickel. Now, Curtis, he mentioned he's watched a lot of Kyle Hamilton film with the Ravens. Hamilton has really blossomed for a Ravens team that utilizes him in that spot at 6'4". Curtis listed at 6'5" by Michigan. He's also listed as a safety where we saw him last season, but Michigan certainly boasts a ton of depth there. Your thoughts on the decision, the experimentation, and what impact it could have Mason Curtis at nickel?
I think you've got two guys in the defensive backfield that don't need to be limited by the initials in front of their name, and that is a position, and that is Mason Curtis and Brandon Hillman. Both of those guys are trained killers. And whether it's ball hawks or just hunting down anybody in an opposite jersey, seek and destroy is the mission that they have. And if you can get more of those guys on the field, if Rod Moore is going to be one of the starting safeties this year, and you've got Brandon Hillman and Mason Curtis, how do you manage getting all those guys in the game at the same time? And you've got the Metcalfs that have transferred in. They've shown some stuff. Zeke Berry, as well as Shug. Is it okay if I call him Shug? Jair Sugar Hill. Everybody.
Oh yeah, I think that's
Shug.
where a lot of people around the program refer to him. That's basically his first name.
Yeah. So and I think he's had a good spring ball as well. So you've got some really good depth there, and you've got to find creative ways to get more guys on the field, and don't limit them. And that's one thing I love about this defense, and especially about Wink. He's not going to limit guys to, well, you can only play this position. We heard him talk about Jayshon Barham. Like, you can only be a middle linebacker. No, that's crap. You got to get good athletes on the field, and the more good athletes that you have on the field doing special things, creating mismatches, and creating questions in protection. That's one of the things that this can do. And, I mean, let's just go back to Mikey Sanders playing the nickel position. Is he blitzing the quarterback? Is he covering? Like, that is a huge question. Mason Curtis has that type of skill set. Brandon Hillman has that type of skill set to be able to get after the quarterback as well as cover your number one receiver, if that's the task at hand. So I really like being able to see a number of different sets in the defensive secondary in terms of personnel groups.
What was Mikey Sanders still doing? He was making plays. How that happened varied from play to play, sequence to sequence, game to game. He made plays. Certainly Mason Curtis possesses that ability. Number 3 on our 7 from 77. One of the best quotes on this team belongs to defensive line coach Lou Esposito. He spoke recently. As we've gotten to know DC Wink Martindale here at Michigan entering his second season, I think he says the word depth and really raves about the importance of depth more than maybe any other word, concept, thought when he talks. So it was promising to hear Esposito say, quote, "You feel really, really good," end quote, about what he has seen from the depth at his position, terming it as the Michigan has waves of guys. Are you as confident in that despite some massive departures up front defensively, literally and figuratively?
Oh, certainly. When you look at, and let's just talk about Josaiah Stewart no longer here, but you've got guys that can fill that role. We'll talk about them in a moment. But the biggest names that are going to be, off the draft board really quickly are Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. So who's going to fill their role? Well, you've got, and I'm just going to list some names here. I don't want to give anything away, and I'm not with the depth chart because these guys are somewhat interchangeable. But Rayshawn Benny, Trey Pierce, Damon Payne, and Trey Williams. Both of those guys are transfers from Clemson and Alabama. Eno Etta and Ike Awuna. All 6 of those guys for 2 positions. And when you have that, and I don't remember how Doug and I, and you and I talked about this 2 years ago, but it was, the first wave of guys. And then all of a sudden, you'd have the rally group. That's what they called it. The rally group that comes in and gives the first group a little bit of a breather. And they come in, there was no drop off in what they were doing and how they were effective on the field. This is another situation where you have all of these guys available. And one of the things, and I thought Jason Avant did a great job last year in one of the early broadcasts of identifying one of the traits of a Wink Martindale defense. And sometimes I agree with it, sometimes I don't. But he likes to rotate guys through and through. And it doesn't matter if it's a key third down situation. Whatever group is supposed to be in there because of the rotation, they're the ones that are expected to play. And when you have the type of depth that this Michigan defensive front has, you're going to be able to do that at a very effective level. And so you may have, like we did 2 years ago, and everybody was wondering, well, Mason Graham's numbers aren't, eye-popping, and Kenneth Grant's numbers aren't eye-popping. Well, they were rotating and only getting, 40 of the 70 snaps. That changed obviously last year because the depth wasn't as developed and it wasn't as good. Now all of a sudden you're looking at 6 guys, and if you have 70 snaps, I could 100% see a world where it's 33% for each guy because they have that ability to rotate guys through and not have any drop off. Then you talk about the edge guys and TJ Guy and Dom Nichols on one side, and you've got Derek Moore and Cameron Brandt at the other. Then all of a sudden you throw in Jayshon Barham, in certain situations as an edge defender. Now you're looking at 5 guys for 2 spots. And I really see the ability to rotate guys through. So every time that somebody's out there, they're fresh and they're at their best. And when you throw waves of players at an offensive line, one, it takes so much more time in film study throughout the week. What does this guy do well? What does he not do well? How can I get an advantage? It really limits your ability to zero in on one guy and what they do.
Number 4 on our 7 from 77. Offensively, in media availability recently, we heard from a couple of receivers. The returning Fredrick Moore, he'll join us on the audio version of In the Trenches coming up in a bit. And the newcomer, Indiana transfer, Donovan McCulley. When asked if he felt like Michigan would throw more in 2025, McCulley said, quote, "I think that's why they brought in Chip," end quote, as in Chip Lindsey, new offensive coordinator. Let's start just your impressions of McCulley, bigger dude with some experience and a fascinating story with his career starting at the collegiate level at quarterback.
Yeah, and it's also why they brought in Donovan McCulley. And to watch him walk in the room here, and wide receivers come in all shapes and sizes. And he is a guy that's 6'3", 6'4". He walks in the room and you're like, okay, this is a big target. You watch him on the field and he uses every inch of that frame and his wingspan. I'm excited to see what he can do on the field. And, just in terms of what this offense will be with the receivers and with the quarterback that can get the ball downfield, I'm really excited about that. And just McCulley himself, the perspective that you have from being a pass thrower, now a pass catcher, you understand there's different ways that a quarterback likes to see their receivers run routes or get to a certain spot and how they want to deliver a ball, and he can also say, okay, this is how I want to receive the ball. It goes both ways. So I think he brings an interesting perspective. And the one that really caught me off guard was his quote on why he wants to be a receiver versus a quarterback. And it to me, I was somewhat surprised at that he, when he grew up, he just played quarterback because he was good at it. All right. That's great. But everybody every little kid wants to be the quarterback. No, he wanted to be a receiver. And so he kind of felt liberated when he made that move from quarterback to receiver. And just a little fun fact, I don't know if this has been said by anybody else, but he is the only quarterback on the roster that's actually thrown a touchdown in the Big House. Take that however you want, but he is now wearing the maize and blue and the winged helmet, so we're glad. I'm really excited to see what he adds to this offense in speed, in size, and experience.
Yeah, Ron Bellamy joked earlier in the week that he thinks Donovan might think he is QB1 in this program. Obviously not, but a very interesting story. And John, was that curiosity on that quote envy?
Yeah, just because I never had a chance to be a quarterback, I was a tight end.
I'm sure you could have been a quarterback at some point.
Oh, sure. I have touchdown passes in my resume.
At Michigan?
No. At the high school level.
Any catches at Michigan?
747 double pass, and we had Paul, my receiver Paul, running a fly route, streak down the field. They'd throw it out to me. I'd line up in the slot and I'd launch it downfield because I could throw it the furthest, and all he had to do was run underneath it, and it was touchdown after touchdown. The only giveaway was as a tight end, right when it got cold, I was wearing gloves, so I had to sneak my glove off in the middle of the play so that they'd throw it to me and not necessarily know I was throwing it downfield.
I did not know that you wore gloves when you played tight end.
Oh, yeah, I wore gloves when I played tight end, blue gloves when I played offensive line. Now, I say I wore gloves, and I'd like to say that, yeah, it was because I was a terrific pass catcher. I wore gloves because I was an O-lineman first, a terrific blocking tight end, and pass catcher second.
Man, I can't wait to tell Jason Avant that you wore gloves in high school when you give him some crap about the weather on the sidelines.
Well, there's one thing about being, it being for professional purposes, another thing for just being soft on the sidelines. This is a guy that wears shorts on the sidelines, so he should be very comfortable not having to wear gloves.
Hey,
he's taken after one Doug Karsh that's the problem.
Based on November 30th, you can never say Jason Avant soft on the sidelines.
This is true. Well, it wasn't on the sidelines. That was on the field. He was ready to go.
He's at the 35, down to the 30. Yeah.
Let's go.
All right, number 5. Let's stick with the wide receivers. Do you have any kind of realm of guess on a potential pecking order or what you think of that depth chart for the wide receivers? Because there's a ton of opportunity there. And certainly there's a lot of, I think people believe, untapped potential. Is there elite untapped potential for this roster?
I don't know that I can say elite right now because I need to see it on Saturdays. But I do think Donovan McCauley surely going to be one of the top targets. Fred Moore, who you're going to hear from today a little bit later on the audio portion of this, is going to be a guy that can really stretch the defense. We saw that a little bit last year. I think it was the USC game where he was running wide open and was just overthrown. I think we'll see more of that. We'll see some connections downfield. Anthony Simpson is part of that equation. And then obviously some of the guys that were here last year will get more opportunities. Samaj Morgan, we know that he's a guy that can be very effective. Channing Goodwin, Kendrick Bell. There's going to be some really good depth of wide receiver. Now it's going to be who can rise to the top and who are going to be the ones that just simply go out there and make plays. It's the quarterback being able to put the ball out there, but sometimes there's 50-50 balls. You've got to go get it. Sometimes there's a ball that's not thrown right on the mark. You've got to go get it. You can't just wait for that ball to come to you. You got to be the one that instigates and makes the play. And I like what I see from Fred and Donovan early on.
Before we continue on our 7 from 77, we want to let you know about a great cause coming up later this month at a softball game. John?
Yeah, and this season, Michigan Athletics and Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan are teaming up in the fight to end childhood hunger. So on Monday, April the 28th, come out to Alumni Field for a 1:00 game between the Wolverines and UCLA. Fans attending the game are encouraged to bring non-perishable food items to be donated to local food banks. If you want to learn more about Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and how they're working to end hunger in Michigan, visit michfb.com/end childhood hunger. So I'll say that one more time. It's Mich Football, michfb.com/end childhood hunger.
The FB stands for Farm Bureau. But I like where your head's at.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's easier to remember. Sorry for everybody at Farm Bureau Insurance. It's not FBI.
Well, that's also taken
for something else. So let's just go with the football player and say it's MICHFB. If that's where you want them to go, then that's where they go.
Love it. All right, it's on the bottom there.
Okay, fine. I'll go full Brian Boesch.
For those on the audio, John had his glasses on pre-show.
Yeah.
And then he took them off and said he didn't want to look like something we're not going to refer to here. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we all didn't have an elite receiver.
I take my shots when I can. I can. I know you will as well.
Yeah, great camaraderie here on episode 505. We're flowing. We're rolling. All right, number 6 on our 7 from 77. We haven't spoken about this on here, but we did learn late last month that the spring game still going to happen for Michigan. It's going to be tape delayed on the Big Ten Network after the portal closes. Not really out there yet or at all. We're just kind of learning. There will not be a radio broadcast of it. The game's still going to happen, but evidence beyond the big house won't truly get out until after the portal closes later this month. Is that a fair compromise to you for what we've seen lately in college football around spring football? And listen, I know you and I are guys who we want to see games. We want to watch football. But I will say, I think the fact that fans can come out and attend is an underrated version of this that I'm glad is being maintained, even if this isn't the typical experience as a Michigan spring game.
A fair compromise. My John was eliminated. So no, it's not a fair compromise. It is not fair for all parties involved. On the football side, sure. If you don't want other programs to be able to see or have video footage of your guys while the portal's open, I get that. I'm glad that they have found a way to still have a spring game, and there'll be plenty of people in the stands that can sit there and watch them play. I also see it as a compliment that the color analyst is so descriptive in telling the listeners what is going on in the field that somebody might be plucked in the portal because of a description that the color analyst made on the radio. I think that's I'll take that as a pat on the back.
I believe that is in the contract. Yes. So congratulations on all your success.
You can tell that I'm a little bit upset that we're not going to be broadcasting the game. However, I do think that this is a great compromise. It allows the players not to have to worry about moving the date of the spring game, which starts to encroach upon getting ready for finals because, yes, these are still student athletes. I know everyone thinks nobody goes to school anymore, but yes, they do go to school. They will either graduate or not, and it is on them. I think this is a great compromise by Fredrick Moore of being able to have the game, broadcast it, and a great compromise from the Big Ten Network to say, yes, we'll send a crew out there, we'll do the game, we'll wait a week until the portal closes to actually have this happen, because I think there are some great lessons, and I've highlighted those. I don't have to go in depth as to why I think the spring game is important, but to be in the big house in front of fans, it's another exposure to some pressure, a different stimulus to see how some of these players react.
Something tells me there'd be a lot of offensive linemen circled on people's radio scouting of, wow, John has really raved about these 13 offensive linemen today.
You would hope. There might be some X'd out as well if I go into too much depth.
That would just be really shining on the defensive lineman or the linebacker in that case. All right, number 7 on our 7 from 77. We talked plenty about the wide receivers earlier, so great appetizer for the audio version, the Fred Moore interview. How about our other two guests coming up? NFL hopefuls Josaiah Stewart and Josh Priebe. Stewart's impact obviously outstanding in his 2 seasons here after coming in from Coastal Carolina. Priebe's 1-year stop in Ann Arbor, a little bit rockier, but he still provided some veteran leadership, some solid productivity up front. Your thoughts on both of these Wolverines NFL futures and just to preview the conversations here.
Whoever takes Josaiah Stewart, because he's projecting to be a guy that goes 3rd, 4th, 5th. And I've seen some where he slips into the 2nd round. They're going to get an absolute steal. He has answered the question at every level about size. And I think he answered it for every Wolverine fan on 4th down in the Rose Bowl. Can he be a guy that takes on a monster offensive tackle in a rundown situation? And can he be successful? Absolutely. So, do I see him as an every down run stopper? No, that's not how they're going to use him, but he's going to be very effective when called upon in those situations. And he'll be very effective at getting after the passer. He's shown that. I liked this year, the development of the better use of hands. I've talked about this a number of different times, whether it's offensive linemen or especially edge rushers, but defensive linemen. The NFL, it's not so much about the shoulder pads. It's about hand fighting and how quickly you can use your hands, how you can go from speed to power, how you can do a lot of different things. So I do think that he is going to be an absolute steal for anybody who takes him where they get him. He's going to be very productive. Josh Priebe, I think, is going to be – he'll be on a roster. It's going to take a little bit of time. Size, development, in terms of technique, pad level, all of those things. but he's going to provide a great depth piece for somebody. And one of the skills that I know he worked on throughout the course of the season and has since the season's been over is snapping the ball, being able to play all three interior spots. If he can show an NFL team that he has that ability to snap the ball and be a center, be an effective center, it's only going to add to the value of having him on a roster where, the offensive line is one of those positions where you got your starting five, you want to have a backup tackle, a backup guard, and then if you can have a swing guy that can play a number of different positions, that's where value really comes and extending your career. And I think Josh Priebe will be able to do that as well.
3 great interviews here on the audio version, starting with wide receiver Fredrick Moore. Here on the video side, a few extra topics here. We'll take you to about the top of the hour, and we will answer any questions that fans have via the comment sections. I do want to start with Bryce Underwood. He's certainly been willing and able to give some interviews. We've heard a lot of quotes about him and what he has brought to the program. Many raving about him being in the facility a long time, digesting film, working with receivers, all of that. How have you taken in what I would call the kind of the media onboarding for Bryce Underwood and his potential impact on this program?
Tremendous composure. And whether it's composure on the field, composure with the mic in his hand, answering questions. And I mean, he's cut out his work for himself, in setting the standard. I don't think, what did he say? A number of Heismans and a number of, be a number 1 overall pick, all those things. And those are goals that everyone has. He just vocalized that. And that's the pressure. That's the expectation that people have for him. So when you have those expectations, you admit those expectations, then you go out on the practice field. You're not afraid to make mistakes. I think that's the biggest thing. He's not apprehensive. He's not afraid to make some mistakes, and he doesn't make the same mistake twice. He's done a great job of learning the offense, learning the terminology, and operating the offense. It doesn't look like it's too big for him. He's out there performing, and he looks comfortable in his position. And he also looks comfortable around his teammates. I think that's going to be huge for him. And I know that this early enrollee thing has really taken off in the last 5, 6, 7 years. But I think it is really important for a quarterback, if they're willing to give up the last part of their senior year in high school, quarterback is such a tough position to learn, just in terms of everything that's going on with the offense, let alone looking and recognizing defenses, the exposure that he's getting with Wink. There are days where things are a little bit more vanilla because they want to see something offensively. And there are a number of other days that they've had where we're going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you. So he's not going to be surprised about anything that happens in the fall if he ends up being the guy that's this number 1 signal caller for this team. But I do like what I've seen from him. And then all the intangibles, right? He can run, he can throw, he's got a great arm. He's been accurate. All of those things are there, but it's about being able to put it all together in a team format and executing it on Saturdays.
Knowing what we know now, is the trajectory of Bryce Underwood such that you would be comfortable with him taking the starting role for week 1 against New Mexico?
I would say, yeah. And I mean, there's going to be a give and take. What he lacks in experience and knowledge, maybe the playbook is a little bit, I don't want to say narrower for him, but it's just a little bit more specific for him. And it will grow throughout the course of the year. It's what I would say really about any freshman coming in to start at that position. You don't want to overload him. You want to make things as simple and slow the game down as much as possible for him. But yeah, I mean, when you think about, and again, I go back to the offensive line and their need to continue to develop. It's not going to be perfect. When you have a quarterback there with his skill set and the ability to get outside the pocket, whether it's a naked, or it's a boot, or it's something of that nature, or it's just, hey, things break down and I got to be a player. I've got to survive, get outside the pocket, and then be able to look downfield and make some plays or tuck it and run it. I think there's a lot of upside to having Bryce Underwood, even if the experience or the entire playbook isn't there.
NFL draft day 1 is now 16 days away in Green Bay. Starting with the Michigan side of things, any reports, rumblings, prognostications that have caught your eye with the Michigan Big Four, which I think we're all pretty confident Mason Graham will be the first Wolverine off the board. And then based on what mock draft you see, I think you can see any other order for the other three: Loveland, Johnson, and Grant.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked to the media in New York with the Giants. I think they've got the 3 pick. Jacksonville, I've done radio down there. And we'll, a couple more this coming week about they want to know what it's like, what Mason Graham is like. Talk to Seattle about both Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. They pick a little bit later. I don't think Mason's going to be available. But, I think, he'll be the first one off the board. And the questions are always, is the film, is he as good in practice as he is on film? And the answer for Mason is absolutely yes. The ceiling for Kenneth Grant is really kind of what I'm intrigued about. Is, he's still a little bit raw, and with some more coaching, some more experience, some more time in the weight room, and just understanding how dominant he could be. I mean, Jim Harbaugh had, I think, maybe the greatest description is God's gift to football. And he really could be, but it's really going to be how bad does he want it, and how much is he willing to develop, listen, work on, master his craft, because he could be as good as there is in the game. Colston Loveland, I've seen him as high as 14, and I see, obviously, if he's there at 22, everybody thinks Jim Harbaugh is going to take him with the Chargers. And
what will Jim do? Will he ask for 2 firsts if 2 of these 4 Wolverines are there?
Yeah.
He'll trade up to 23.
Yeah, he'll trade up to 23. And so I whoever gets Colston Loveland is going to get one of the next great tight ends. And there's a number of really good tight ends. We saw Brock Bowers and what he was able to do last year. Obviously, locally here, Sam Laporta. And we know what some of the other Mark Andrews and the other tight ends are doing. But I think he fits right into that group as he continues to grow at that tight end position. He's got a very unique awareness of defenses. I think he understands defenses, where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there, and just finds those little nooks and crannies that tight end, the good tight ends find. Like, how does Kelsey get open all the time? Well, maybe it's a little bit off schedule. Maybe it's not exactly what he's supposed to do, but if he can develop a rapport with a quarterback and they get on the same page, I think he could be a huge weapon in the NFL. And then I think the really wild card is going to be Will Johnson. I've seen him as high as, even now, 6 or 7 because of just his unbelievable skill set. And I've seen him as low as late 20s because he didn't play a lot last year. When he played, it was great. And obviously we remember the pick sixes and we remember how good he was over the last couple of years, but he missed a lot of time. Wasn't able to work out at the combine, wasn't able to work out at pro day. Now I know he has a personal workout schedule that's going to be very important for him, just to show that he's healthy. And I don't know. Yeah, people are going to be looking at the numbers and he's going to ooh and ah in some of those numbers, but just to show that he's healthy. And then, the conversations will go to whether it's legitimate or not. The teams are going to have to decide, is he going to be durable enough at the next level? Because you're not going to play 17 games without getting nicks and bumps and bruises, is he going to be willing to play through some of those? And again, it doesn't matter if you or I think those are legitimate questions. They're going to be asked, and his answers will be somewhat determining where he goes in this draft.
You missed it last week. Part of In the Trenches was a Colston Loveland interview with John. Really cool, fun stuff. He was talking about what the plan is in Gooding, Idaho, for April the 24th. Really cool story there. But yeah, it will be a heck of a night in Green Bay for Michigan football to see almost certainly 4 Wolverines go. The rumblings at 1. If you were the Titans, would you take Cam Ward at 1?
I think they have to. I mean, they didn't invest a first round pick in Will Levis. And so there's no commitment there. He didn't do anything last year to think he's going to be a franchise quarterback. I don't know that Cam Ward is. I don't know Shedeur is. I don't know that any of these quarterbacks are. And I know that was it Jackson Dart had a great combine, has worked his way into a lot of mocks in the first round. It's flipping the coin, but you got to take as many bites at the apple as you possibly can. And I don't know that they're in a position to pass on. They may not be right, but I don't know that they're in a position to pass on what could be their franchise quarterback.
Before we get out of here, with the spring game approaching here a week from Saturday, spring practices winding down, what do you look for this stretch run of spring from an improvement standpoint versus the early stages? Is it more geared toward the younger guys, the ones you haven't seen as much, or do you keep tabs on the ones that you're expecting to be a starter come fall?
Yeah, and it's probably a little bit of a different evaluation for each. When I see the guys out there that I expect to be starters, I expect to be veteran players that have some experience. It's about communication. Things are going to be a little bit different. You got different teammates, different skill sets, different calls. And what's that communication look like? Are you always on the same page defensively? Is there, at any point, are there free runners in the secondary? Are there any gaps where it looks like the defensive line, half the line went one way, half the line went the other? All of those things are breakdown in communication. So for those guys, it's more about communication. For the young guys, it's still about skill development and creating experiences. And I mentioned it early on, and it doesn't matter the position. If you get beat in any drill, in any situation, why did you get beat? And how do you prevent that from happening again? What do you learn from it? What do you take away from it? And those lessons learned in the first 5 to 7 practices need to be different. And you're going to make mistakes. You just need to be making new ones and learn from those. And that's how you build the confidence that, hey, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. Helps build confidence with the coach. It helps push the offense and defense forward. And so that's really what I'm going to be looking at for the young guys.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here on this potentially eve of some April snow from what I've seen in the forecast tomorrow night?
It's possible. And anybody that has lived in the state of Michigan for any length of time knows that we are not done with snow. It can happen all the way up and past Easter. I've even seen Mother's Days with some flurries of snow. So
I don't bank on it till Memorial Day, man. Maybe not snow, but yeah. I will not be confident about putting away the heavier jackets until Memorial Day.
Well, wearing a jacket, that's a whole different discussion. We can get into that further on down the road.
I think we got to go.
You kind of open up a can of worms there for me. But, yes, I do like a crisp, cool morning. Warm days, those are on the horizon. They will arrive, but yes, we will probably have some snowflakes this week. But for Michigan football, due to the generous donations of Al Glick, have the Glick Fieldhouse to be able to spend as much time as they want in spring ball. And it's a thing of beauty. They're getting a lot of work done, and I as well. My blood has become a little bit thinner as I have gotten older, so I enjoy watching football inside. It just shouldn't be there in the fall, which it won't be because the big house has no roof on it. Now we can just get grass back. Ward, if you're listening, grass.
Yeah, nothing else is going on in college athletics right now, so I'm sure he's
last of his worries.
Yeah. Sure he's locked in on In the Trenches live stream here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. As he's hanging out with the house, and not his house, but with the house settlement.
The house settlement, which is still TBD. It sounds
isn't
like
everything.
We were supposed to have this big answer on April the 7th, which was yesterday, Monday. But it got pushed off at least another 7 days. Still some more answers that need to be sorted out. It eventually will happen, and then we'll discuss that when that time arrives.
Yeah, you should just know if you're expecting an answer on a certain day, doesn't always mean it has to happen. Yeah, no. That certainly did not happen on Monday.
For Michigan football answers, in the trenches.
Oh,
that's
man.
Where you got to be. That's the transition that you're looking for.
Yep. And thank you, Al Glick. We got it all. All right. For John, I'm Brian. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week, another live stream next week as we count you down to the spring game. We count you down to the NFL draft here on In the Trenches and on the Michigan YouTube channel.